All right. Hey, Julia, welcome to the show.
Hi, Caitlin. I'm happy to be here.
How are you doing getting settled in as a newly moved AZ local?
I'm doing good. As any of you guys, or none of you guys probably know this, but I just moved from San Diego and now I'm in the Phoenix area. So I'm really liking it. It's not too hot to me. I know some people think this is hot. I don't think it is. So
Yeah,
I think that's
well,
good.
we'll get there.
It's not summer yet. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, like, people are always like, you get used to it, don't you? I'm like, not really. And I've lived here my whole life. So it is
Really?
what it
That's
is.
crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
You would think you'd get adjusted. Yes, though.
Yeah, yeah, but it's like the cold, I guess, too. Like when you're,
Yeah, that's true.
when you live in some place that experiences winter, it's like, oh, you
That's
never
true.
get used to it. I'm like, no
Yeah,
thanks, miss me in the
that's
snow.
true. And I am very excited for bringing like my skillet outside and cracking an egg. That's something I've always seen in Arizona. I'm like, I want to do that.
Oh my gosh, you're gonna be able to do that. It'll be perfect. I can't wait. We'll have to see the videos.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. So one thing I love to ask all my guests as we get started with the show is, are you spiritually active?
I am, and I think it's really important, especially when you have a business. I know you just dropped some news on me this just before we went on this, and I think that's super important because if you're not aligning with something like it's beyond yourself, I think it's really hard to grow a business. I think it's really hard to be because you have to be aligned with some type of purpose, and I think that's really important
That's
with
beautiful.
anything you do in life. But you know me, I'm just kind of pulling it more toward like an entrepreneur type of mindset. But
Yeah, I love that. What is the words, how do they resonate with you being spiritually active? What do they mean to you? And can you share with us some of the modalities or methods you use to connect with your higher self?
yeah, I think a lot of it is especially meditation.
Mm,
That's something I typically do because I'm someone who definitely is very like the anxious kind of individual. And I think when I am like that, I definitely feel very disconnected with purpose, my higher self, all of those things. And so just taking the time, like it's not,
mm,
I can't really go that long to doing it to be honest, but even just like a few minutes, like 5 minutes, like I know that sounds probably short to a lot of people, but it's something that's always been hard for me. It's always hard for me to do anything that's like not really using my brain. I feel like I'm kind of, I don't know what type of personality I have, but very kind of always in the go, but it's just
totally.
not something that can really go, like, you have to make sure you're taking that time out. So that's definitely something that I try to focus on. Yeah.
I love that. I feel like, to your point, it's not even sometimes the act of meditating or breathing or whatever it
Yeah.
is. It's the act
Yeah.
of taking the time for yourself.
Yes.
Because when you are running a business and you are, naturally a person that continues to move forward, it can be hard to give yourself that space and time to slow down. But once you do, it's like, okay, that makes the hard days just a little bit, I won't even say easier, but a little bit more tackleable comparatively to
Yeah.
like, oh my God,
Yeah,
this
just a little
is
less
dreadful.
overwhelming and there's not so much in your head. Because I'm definitely that person. I hate admitting it, but it's just, I know people can resonate with a little bit with that in this world. So.
Yeah, I love that. Beautiful. Do you, when you practice meditation, is it like you're sitting in silence? Do you like read some affirmations? Like put us in this space with
So
you.
I typically just go outside. It was something I've always done when I was in California too. It's definitely hotter here, but I still
Yep.
do it in the mornings. Right now it's really nice. So I don't really like do any cards. I don't really do anything like that. I just really just like don't bring anything out with like don't bring my phone out with me. Obviously, or else I'm
Mm-hmm.
just going to look at something. I don't even play like music. Some people do the music thing. I just try just to sit there and then eventually I'll stop kind of thinking about all the things I'm thinking about and it just kind of edges me out. But right now, so I used to live in San Diego, so I was right in like the Hillcrest area. If any of you guys are like familiar with it, it's very
Yeah.
busy, pretty noisy. Yeah, and so here in Scottsdale, it's like birds chirping, very
Oh, yeah.
like suburban. I'm not used to that. I'm like, where are my ambulances? But I've noticed that's definitely been helping my meditation more. It's definitely been
Mm,
helping me veg out a little bit more, and kind of reaching that like peaceful state a little bit and reaching that
totally.
like no like having my mind more at rest, I guess, and reaching that meditation state faster than I used to, which is
Beautiful.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so funny. I also practice or try to,
Yeah,
breathe or meditate in the morning a little bit. And it's always so funny. Why do we do that in the morning? It's like we just woke up. What is on our mind?
that's
you know?
true.
But the connection with nature or the sun or what
Yeah.
have you, it really does help you like go in the right direction on your day for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I do because I sometimes did do in the afternoon, to be totally honest, like in California. I kind of just did whenever I felt kind of like I needed to just
Oh, I
go on a
love that
walk, like
too.
even like a walk, yeah, or something like that. But here I've noticed because it is the nicest in the morning, I usually do just go outside. I know it's not realistic
Yeah.
to always go out in the sun when it's really hot. I know that
Yeah.
sounds so soft of me to say, but
No.
it's so much better in the morning.
All our organs boil the same
Yeah,
if we spend too much time out there. So it is
exactly.
what it
So,
is.
yeah.
Cool. Well, you and I have gotten to learn a little bit about each other, but for the listeners who don't know very much about you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so guys, my name is Julia. My background is in nutrition, dietetics. I'm also a holistic health coach, but my primary company is I'm a owner of a holistic health food company. So really primarily focusing on helping women support their hormones naturally, and offering them like a more convenient and simple and like approachable way to be able to do this, and something that's not only convenient but also super tasty, and something fun to do. So it's called Seed Cycling. That's the main product. I will be doing a hard launch on other products here in the next couple months, and maybe we'll be doing a podcast around that. But seed cycling is the main kind of topic we're going to talk about here because I don't know if you guys ever heard of it, but it's definitely involving different nutrients or different phases of your cycle. There's a lot we weren't taught in high school, and a lot we don't know about how food can really help support
Mm.
hormones. It can help with cycle regulation. It can help with coming off of birth control, like all the things that we as women experience, and just there's so many different natural things you can do that we just weren't really taught. It's kind of mind blowing to talk about sometimes.
Oh my gosh, please blow
Yeah.
our minds. So, you and I have a mutual friend, Rachel, who is also
Yes.
on this podcast.
Hmm.
And she talked a little bit about hormonal birth
Yeah.
control and all that good stuff. And I've been on it for a very long time. I will
Yeah.
openly and honestly share that. And I am very, very ready to
Yeah.
end that phase cycle, if you will, of my life and kind of move into a natural holistic. But I feel very still like kind of scared, a little bit fearful, very unaware about it. So can you tell us a little bit about like what don't we know as women or anybody about women's
Yeah.
menstrual cycles and what we weren't taught in school that maybe
Yeah.
we should
So
know?
yes. Well, the first stuff I like to say is the fertility topic. So we're going to get into menstrual cycle, but I always want to kind of start it by saying fertility is actually something that's important regardless if you want kids. And I think that's
Mm.
something that we weren't really taught, like hormone health right now. Some
Wow.
people may be like, oh, like hormone health, like I don't really care. Like I immediate no, like I'm going to stop listening to this because it doesn't really pertain to you maybe if you don't want kids. Right now, I can honestly say I'm not really thinking about kids anytime in the near future either, but I really care about hormone health because I know fertility equals reproductive health, which equals my overall health. And so I think
Wow.
starting off, it's really important for people to know that these hormones, like estrogen, progesterone, which are those main sex hormones that are involving in our menstrual cycle, these are really helpful for not only with like heart health and also like bone health, which osteoporosis is like a huge problem when you get older. So this
Yes.
is definitely an approach to preventative medicine as well. But again, our menstrual cycle is, I'm sure, again, Rachel probably touched on all of this, but I mean, our period's like our fifth vital sign. Our menstrual cycle is
Mm.
an indicator of our health. So that's like why it's so important. So I always like to kind of start off just saying that. But anyhow, the menstrual cycle has four different phases that kind of impact our digestion. It impacts our appetite. It also impacts like cravings, mood swings, like skin, all of those things.
Yeah, sex
Um,
drive, right?
yeah,
Like,
exactly. Like
yeah.
libido. Yeah, everything that you may experience. It's something I always tell people is to get a journal out every single day and kind of track like how you're feeling, like what your
Mm.
skin's looking like cravings. Yeah, all those things, and you'll notice every single week things are kind of different. And that's because it really is different because you have four different phases and it's not just your period and nothing else is going on. And that's kind of what we were just taught. It was like, yes, you get your period, but
Mm.
that you just get it every month. There's nothing else that's going on. But ovulation is actually that main event of your cycle, and we weren't even taught that. So basically
Wow.
yeah, so I know it's super crazy.
You're like
But
flipping the script in my mind.
yeah, yeah, so with all of these mind-blowing facts that we just talked about, let's talk about kind of each phase of the cycle and
Yeah.
like what's going on. So anyhow, the first half of your cycle is going to be when estrogen is rising. The first phase is going to be menstruation. This is when your endometrial lining is being shed.
Mm.
Because of this, this is when your period, again, is going to be happening. As your period comes to a close, you start to get in your follicular phase. This is when not only is estrogen rising, and it's like the first half of your cycle, so I always kind of explain it like when you're in this first half of your cycle, you have a certain amount of responsibilities that your body goes through, and that's to help make sure you're thickening your uterine lining to help prepare it
Mm.
for that main event of your cycle, which is ovulation. That's when the egg is released from your ovary. But you also want to make sure that you are supporting follicle development as well. And so we'll get into the different nutrients too after this and talk about seed cycling, kind of how that supports your body. But the main thing I kind of want to head home for everyone is that we have different, like again, we have different events, different responsibilities that are happening during this half of your cycle.
Sure.
And then when we ovulate, this is when, again, egg is being released from your ovary. And so this is going to trigger progesterone production. This is the second hormone of your cycle. And so progesterone is rising all throughout your luteal phase. This is, again, like the 1 to 2 weeks before your period. And this hormone is really important for not only fertility, but also great for mood and also great for sleep as well. So for women who are like, I always have mood swings before my period, like breast tenderness and I have trouble sleeping, that's probably because your progesterone isn't being produced. And so it's really important that,
Mm.
again, we're supporting that, progesterone production. We're also supporting estrogen, and we're supporting ovulation, follicle development, all these different things. And the big over like lying factor with this is it's our diet. It's what's going to be producing these hormones. Hormones are actually made up of fat and protein. And I always say that because I find that even just so interesting when you think about it, that like hormones are made up of certain compounds, and if we're not consuming them, like we aren't going to be able to
Wow.
make them. Yeah, and we also have, different micronutrients that are going to like vitamins and minerals. These are what's going to help trigger like the production of hormones, and it's going to help excrete excess hormones. They bind to different receptors in our bodies, so it's really important that we're also consuming these too in our diet. So that was a very speedy little breakdown. What do
Perfect.
you think? Do you have any questions like further on that?
Oh
But
my gosh. Well, for me, I just recently, in the past maybe 2 or 3 years, have become familiar with those phases of the cycle.
yeah, yeah,
And it's always interesting, even myself being on birth control, I still, I'm speaking to my personal experience here. It could
yeah,
be anybody. Like, I still experience a lot of dysregulation in those spaces, right? And so you would think, like, oh, person on birth control, it's a very controlled environment because you're on a regimented type of
yeah,
cycle, if you will, right?
yeah, exactly.
But it's really cool to hear about like the background of the fact that like we are built out of these things and need to continue
Yeah,
to fuel them. I've never heard that perspective before. And that's really refreshing because to all of us, or most of us, the period is the event, right? It's
yeah,
like the
yeah,
couple days of the month where you're like, everything's whatever. I don't feel my best.
yeah.
And I think oftentimes we make an enemy out of certain hormones if we
Mm,
had that education, or even just certain times of the month where, like, we feel very out of control of ourselves. And so I think that information just provides a lot of clarity for people who identify as female to go in and like, okay, it's not me, it's the progesterone, right? Or
yeah,
like, okay, how can I
exactly.
actually take the feeling of control and freedom back to nourish myself in a way that supports me not feeling that way, or at least feeling less extreme versions
Yeah,
of what we associate with our cycle.
yeah, exactly. And that there's so many women who, yeah, deal with all of those things, either feeling super extreme in those ways, or a lot of women dealing with irregular cycles. That's something
I
that I've
struggle with
noticed.
that.
Yeah, well, I used to too. Yeah, and that's when,
Yeah.
I mean, that's a whole other story of mine, but I was misdiagnosed with PCOS, and that's, a huge
Wow.
factor is women dealing with irregular cycles, or women even just coming off of birth control. Like, if you recently come off of birth control and you're struggling with an irregular cycle, that's so common because, like, your body's still trying to excrete all these, like, synthetic hormones, and it's really trying to make sure your other hormones, your main reproductive hormones, are being woken up. So it can be a little hard to get regulated kind of right away. But yeah, it's so common. That's one of the biggest things I've noticed. Not even like PMS, like their regular cycle part,
Yeah.
that a lot of people are dealing with. Yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy. So you've talked a little bit about seed cycling already.
Yeah.
Can you, like, what is it? Tell us what that is.
Let's break down seed cycling. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So basically, all you're doing is consuming different seeds in specific phases of your menstrual cycle. So that makes a lot more sense, I think, now that we already kind of talked about
Yes.
how the menstrual cycle, breaks up, and now that's a little more digestible, I think, to a lot of people. So anyhow, this makes it a lot more simple to, make sure that you're supporting these different phases and these different events by consuming just these different seeds. So sometimes I think the whole cycle syncing method, which is basically, if no one knows what that is, basically just aligning your lifestyle, your nutrition to your cycle. However, it can get kind of overwhelming for people who go like phase by phase by phase by phase, and it's like 4 phases, and everyone's kind of eating differently. For some people, it's like self-care to them. It's something that's great, but some people can be stressful, and I definitely, cycle syncing should never be like a diet. It's not something that's trendy. It's just leaning into like your intuition. It's just literally paying attention to your cycle and just honestly
beautiful.
it's honestly just paying attention to your cycle and just listening to it. That's how I always like to describe it, because it's really what it is in the grand scheme of things. So anyhow, with seed cycling, again, you're consuming flax and pumpkin seeds from day 1 to 14 of your cycle. So that's period ovulation. And then you're just consuming the sesame and sunflower seeds from day 15 to 28 of your cycle. And that's basically ovulation to your next period. And so why these are consumed just these 2 halves of your cycle is, if I showed you a graphic right here, I should just give you a graphic to show everyone
we'll put it in the show notes.
It makes it a lot simpler to explain it. But there's kind of like these 2 main phases so there's 4 phases, but it's where your hormones are rising and falling. So from day 1 to 14, your estrogen is rising. So up to ovulation, again, we learned that thickens the uterine lining to help prepare for ovulation, and then it peaks, and then after ovulation, your progesterone is rising. Now what happens when deal with PMS is, typically toward the end of the cycle, again, closer to your period in your luteal phase, women are having too much estrogen up here, and you want to make sure estrogen is more important the first half. And then progesterone's like, hey, I want to make sure that I'm being produced.
Aww.
But it's not because there's too much estrogen. Yeah, and so typically...
I want to be the star of the show.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, that's kind of where the whole like seed cycling comes in, is so you're going to get that support for each hormone. So it's going to have its time to shine. It's going to make sure it's being produced. But the biggest thing, it's also going to make sure it's being excreted too. Like, want to make sure that one leaves and that one's not the star of the show anymore and the other one is. So that's an easy way to describe it, but basically the pumpkin and flax seeds have specific nutrients that are going to support estrogen levels. So basically the flaxseed contains these compounds called like lignans and phytoestrogens, and that's basically a fancy word for like basically compounds that are supporting estrogen metabolism.
Okay.
So it's really important, again, from like that time when estrogen is the main hormone, to make sure that's being produced. We also have zinc found in pumpkin seeds, which is an amazing mineral for your reproductive system, but it's also great for like supporting ovulation. And so that's the main event that's coming up. So we want to make sure that's being supported too. We also have omega-3s that are found in flax to help with decreasing inflammation. And again, because this is being consumed during menstruation, this is super supportive. And also we have iron to help replenish red blood cells, which, as we all know, like iron's super important for when you're losing blood during that time too. So that is like the main blend for that half of your cycle, and that's like the whole why behind these specific seeds. And then lastly, the other blend, which is taking from ovulation to your next period, that's, again, we're looking for specific seeds that are supporting progesterone production. So we're looking for nutrients like vitamin E and B6. These have actually been researched back to help support progesterone production. So those are higher in the sesame and sunflower seed blend, which is the radiant blend. So that's the blend that we sell. But anyhow, that's going to be the main hormones being supported. It's also really great. Vitamin E and B6 are great for like breast tenderness. So a lot of women in seed cycle can notice like not only their mood kind of become less irritable, like a little bit like less mood swingy around this time, but also there's breast tenderness, can like be, less bad at this time too, just due to the vitamin E. That's been a really great vitamin for that. And also B vitamins are found in this blend too, just for overall energy. I always say B vitamins are like your energy vitamins. So they're really great for fighting off fatigue. And then we have selenium too, which is a really important mineral that's going to help not only support thyroid health, but it's really great for liver detox, making sure you're excreting waste, toxins, and excess hormones too.
I saw your reel the other day about Brazil nuts. Are
Oh
those are
yes,
high in selenium,
yes, they're
right?
hot. Yeah,
Yeah.
those are
I'm
great. Those
like,
are the
I
highest
gotta
food source.
go. I gotta go buy some Brazil nuts.
Yes, those are super high. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, those
Very
are great
cool.
foods. Yeah, but
Okay.
that's a little breakdown of that.
What whether folks have all these seeds at home, or maybe they're curious about purchasing your blends,
Yeah.
like how do you incorporate them in your diet? Are you spoonfuling seeds? I'm sure, obviously not, but are you adding it to smoothies? Like, is there a certain way that we ingest and digest these that make them most effective
Yeah.
for our bodies?
Yeah, so I have had someone actually do the spoonful thing. So I think it's funny. I would hate doing that. I mean,
Me
I don't think
too.
they taste like. I think they taste good on like. I would rather add on some things. I think it tastes like really good on food. I think it's like a nice texture. So yes, all you're doing is adding 2 tablespoons of the correct blend on food. It could be like soup, salad, smoothies, yogurt, oatmeal, toast, literally anything. I personally do it on yogurt, like avocado toast and eggs. It's like a little weird combination, but I can sprinkle it on that
Yum.
those types of foods. We can also mix in like energy bites, or again, you can add on like different types like quinoa bowls, things like that. It's literally very flavor neutral, so it's gonna go along with anything you use. And I always say just make sure you're adding on food you already eat. That is the easiest way to make it into a habit. A lot of people, and I love like the inspo and how they're so inspired to like create these different things. And there are a lot of recipes too like, on my feed that I share, so you guys can do
Awesome.
that. But it could also be a lot easier just like add on top of what you're already eating, because it's already a habit. Typically, people eat at least one of the things they eat every day, like every day. Like if you have like a yogurt, typically people have like that yogurt every single day. So just adding the seed blend is like a piece of cake. Super
Yeah,
easy. So
just I have a
yeah,
smoothie almost every morning. It's like
yeah,
slap
just
it
add
on
on top
top
of
of
there.
there,
Yeah,
and yeah. Okay, awesome.
exactly.
Wow, that's awesome. Like I am
Yeah,
astonished at how easy you just made it sound.
yeah,
To your point, like it can feel really overwhelming when it comes to I would say especially women like feeling like full ownership of their health. And so I
yeah.
think just knowing that one, there's products out there, but two, there's just opportunities for us to learn more about how to naturally support ourselves is really exciting to hear,
Yeah,
honestly.
exactly. I agree.
What do you say for women who might be on birth control, right? Or who don't naturally track their cycle? Like, since I was 13, right? Like, I used a period tracker app, but sometimes it doesn't provide the education on which
Yeah,
phase you're in, depending on what you use or just
yeah.
kind of where you find yourself in your reproductive health journey. So, what would you share for folks that might be like questioning getting off birth control, on birth control, in terms of seed
Yeah.
cycling?
So being on birth control, I mean, I always tell people I'm not the person. There's a lot of people I feel on social media who are like birth control should be completely banned. Some people are surprised at this. I don't agree with that. Like
Yeah,
I'm very like I don't agree for it for me, and I probably won't recommend it for someone ever. But it's also people are in always different situations. Some people just
absolutely.
don't have the resources, and so that's kind of where I'm always out the birth control thing. But again, I always say seed cycling is still supportive. Now you
Hmm.
aren't, truly being honest, you're not going to have those same, fluctuations. You're just not with
Yeah.
birth control. Everything is like flat. You know what I mean? You're not having those fluctuations. That's what seed cycling is supporting. But what I always say is you're getting those micronutrients. So we talked
Hmm.
about vitamin E, iron, like magnesium, selenium, zinc, particularly magnesium, selenium, and zinc and B vitamins. Those are actually those are depleted in specifically hormonal birth control pills. So
Hmm.
like Yaz is one of those. I was on one of those. So I always talk about that one the most, but that one does deplete nutrients. So, and a lot of people are on the pill. That's typically the birth control I feel like of choice. It's just the easiest. I used to
Totally.
think it was like the most natural. I was told that. That's why I went on it. But anyhow, like I do still recommend it because these seeds are giving you the nutrients you need to be able to support, even though they're not fluctuating, it's still giving your hormones support while you're on something like that that is depleting those nutrients. The
Hmm.
biggest thing I can't stand is when practitioners do recommend a pill is they don't tell you to take a multivitamin. They don't tell you to watch your diet. They don't tell you to make sure you're
Yeah.
consuming these specific foods, because that's like really important. If you're going to be on the pill, you just want to make sure you're being responsible and making sure and that's even more important, to be supporting yourself with like different types of fruits and vegetables, like, seed cycling, all the different types of whole foods that can make sure you're
Yeah.
helping your body during this like depleted time. When you're on the pill, if you're on like the copper IUD, I will say that when you are actually having hormonal
Mm.
fluctuations, the copper IUD is technically non-hormonal, so that's still like seed cycling is definitely still great for it. I'll also just touch on the fiber aspect of it too. Seeds, usually when people start seed cycling, not everyone tells me this, but like it can actually like make your bowel movements a little bit different. It sounds so weird.
Totally. Yeah.
Not different, not like a bad thing, but like it can make you more regular, in terms of
Hmm.
like people have constipation or, which is a huge sign of like a hormonal imbalance. So I think it's really
Totally.
great the seeds do that. So people on birth control, you want to make sure you're making sure you're excreting like waste toxins, excess hormones. And so it can be great for that too. And fiber is great for gut health. So that's a really, it's a really tough one. The pill does a lot with your gut, specifically like hormonal birth control. So it's
Yeah.
supportive for that too. But it's not the exact same. Like I won't say that, but
Yeah,
it's
it's good
helpful.
to know that you can
Yeah.
at least try, right? Or
Yeah.
even if, as people transition off birth control
Yes,
or
that's even more
any
important.
other, honestly, form of not healthcare, but form of taking care of themselves when it comes
Yeah,
to,
exactly.
their hormones and whatnot. It's good to know we have options for sure.
Yeah, I will just touch on that, especially when you're on birth control. I think it's really important if you're thinking about coming off birth control in less than a year. And that is still a lot of time to like think about coming off birth control. I think you should do seed cycling, or like even like less than 6 months or 3 months, because your body does need time to like be supported instead of transitioning cold turkey. And by that I mean
Yes.
like some people. I was one of those people too. Comes off of birth control, had no support, did not do anything natural like to help with my body's like detox pathways, and I did not have a good experience coming off of birth control for those years. So I always recommend like start soon before you come off, to start supporting your body and start kind of educating yourself a little bit more. There's definitely a lot of free
Mm,
resources. You don't have to buy books, you don't have to buy a lot of stuff to start understanding your cycle, which is great in this day and age that you really don't have to anymore. But start just looking over those things, because I think that's going to be really helpful for when you come off. Because with seed cycling, you're starting to understand your cycle, and so that's just a great little plug-in part of it that no one really talks about. But
I get so mad talking about this. I'm not mad now.
oh yeah, yeah,
But just the lack of I wish I knew you 10
yeah,
years ago, right?
yeah.
And I
I
wish
agree.
this
I know.
information, to your point, was accessible and available because
Hmm.
in our society, I think it's the bottom line is like we're preventing pregnancy, and that's what birth control is
Yeah.
for.
Hmm.
But we're also told, right, that, if we have really heavy periods or really bad acne, this is a great resolution for those things.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's just so unfortunate because I think those are all different avenues of our overall well being and health,
Yeah.
that it's really easy to just kind of slap a solution on versus being brave and actually advocating for yourself to go out there
Yeah.
and find that information. And to your point, I'm so
Hmm.
grateful that it's much more easily accessible to us
Yes,
now.
it is.
But
Hmm.
I'm a result of like, oh my God, I wasn't ready to have a baby. And this is what
Yeah.
was told to me is the best way to do that. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I
crazy.
totally agree with you. I think it's really frustrating, especially when you talk to anyone a lot older. They're like, "What?" Like, I feel like people are even older than us. Like, what are you talking about? They're even more thrown off about what is such a
Yeah,
crazy. It's been so many years that we're just now starting to understand all of this. Like you said, it's also a positive thing, because I think there's a lot more free resources now, and I think women who are younger just have a better shot at being able to be like a better advocate for themselves. That's really what it's all
yeah,
about. If you're not educated on it, you can't really be an advocate for yourself in terms of your health, because you don't know.
right.
And I think so many of us, like, we're all really in those circumstances at one point, with especially getting on birth control. Like I said, birth control is not bad, especially if you're doing it for pregnancy. But I always got more bitter toward birth control because I got on it for like acne and painful
Right.
periods. And I get way more mad at people who get on it for that reason, or that, not mad at
Totally.
people, mad at the practitioners, because there's just no other option given. I always speak kind of from that point instead of like the birth
Yeah.
control aspect because that was always my personal experience. So it's
Yeah.
annoying.
Will you share a little bit more
Yeah.
about how you found this practice and
Yeah.
honestly your background in dietetics, and did I say
Yeah.
that right?
Yes. Yeah.
I think I
Dietetics,
did.
nutrition.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
nutrition. Just because I think, seed cycling is one thing, right? But overall wellness and health in that aspect is really important too. So would love
Yeah.
to hear, like, how'd you get here?
Yeah, awesome. So how I actually came across seed cycling was through my own personal experience. So I always tell people my background's in nutrition, dietetics. I went to Penn State. I'm from Pennsylvania. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
from the East Coast, and I actually got off of it when I was in college. And it's very normalized now that a lot of people are getting off birth control in college, which is great. And I get a little scared. I'm like, just make sure you're being good because we also don't want, obviously, unwanted pregnancies in college. But I think it's great that like
Mm.
more women are just under like knowing what's going on. More people are being told, or not being told, but just are starting to become educated more on
Right.
this when they're in college, which is great. But when I came off and I started to tell my friends in college, it was 2019. So it was about 5 years ago now. It was the August 2019, so about 5 years. And when I told people, they were so shocked about it. Like people were like, "Why are you talking about birth control? What do you mean? Like it depletes nutrients?" People were like that. It was
Mm.
only 5 years ago. But people had no idea, and I wasn't. People didn't even believe what I said. So that's how
Ugh.
far we've come, which is a positive thing. But that's kind of how it started. Was I didn't have a period for a year after I came off the pill, and when I did go back to my doctors, and obviously I went to my doctors for everything. Yeah, that's kind
I
of
know
how it all
exactly what
started.
you're gonna
Yeah,
say.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. If you want me to tell my whole story, it's kind of how it all starts. Is I would go to the doctors like 6 months and I didn't get my period back. That's how it started. Was 6 months in, didn't get my period back. I always knew that was going to happen. I always knew my time off of birth control would be a negative one. I kind of knew I was always going to fall in line with a lot of other people's experiences coming off birth control because they always say if you go on birth control for symptoms, you're probably going to get them all back plus more because you had an issue. You're totally band-aiding it for
Ugh.
5 years and you're just wiping. Yeah. So I knew I was probably going to get that. But I was hopeful and I was trying to do as much as I could. But again, 6 months later, I went to the doctor, told them that they ran like all my levels, like my hormones, everything was normal. Again, conventional lab test. Yeah, it's not normal if I don't get my freaking period. So there was that, and then I finally went to another doctor, and then they ran more labs. They ran like nutrient levels if I was deficient in something, except I wasn't on a diet. Like I was eating every single food. It's not like I was like lacking really anything, and so those came out normal as well. I was like, okay, and I was like, what's your solution? So I want to make sure I get my period back, but everything they were telling me to do was what I was already doing, and sorry, how did that wet my mouth?
Oh, you're good.
But
Getting
so
fired up.
yeah, I'm getting fired up. So yeah, they basically just told me just to go back on the pill, which was something again, everyone's stories are so similar. But we go back on the pill or like to take some
Mm.
sort of like synthetic hormones to like, trigger a bleed. So we're gonna tell me to stay on it forever, but it was something that would trigger. And I'm like, obviously, I'm not gonna do any of that. I was like, that just defeats the purpose, and it's not gonna fix anything. It's probably just gonna become irregular again. It's gonna be absent. It's just gonna be suppressed, like all of those things. So I ended up just again putting my health into my own hands and finding things that helped. And I didn't come across seed cycling at this time. I wish I did, because that probably would have helped me get my period back. But I did. That is when I was starting to focus more on lifestyle changes. So
Mm.
my story really started with kind of more lifestyle, like reducing stress, making sure that I'm moving my body in a way that supports my hormones. So I'm glad that I kind of had that foundation before I started seed cycling. I think that's also so important for women to hear. Like seed cycling is not like a quick fix. Sure, can it help like bring your period back or help regulate your cycle? Yes, it can. But I think it's so important to make sure that people know like I had to go from to get my period, like I had to literally cut out HIIT workouts. Like I had to cut out really intense like cardio. And because of that, because my cortisol was so high, a lot of it's
Mm.
involving cortisol and it's involving then like when cortisol is high, it can also impact progesterone levels, all those different things. So I think it's super important that people address lifestyle because so much of our health issues can come from stress and it can come from working out too much, it can come from maybe under eating a little bit. So that's really what I did, and that's really what helped me get my period back and keep it from going away again. But this is when seed cycling comes in, is when I did finally get my period back, it was super painful, which I was expecting. Super painful every single month. I couldn't go to work once a month. I had to like tell my boss every
Oh my
single month that
gosh.
I was having a situation. She understood. She was a girl, so she was very understanding about it. But
Yeah.
yeah, every single time I got my period, it was so bad. I would have to like literally go home. And it was so irregular as well. And I think, again, we touched already about that kind of earlier about irregular cycles, but I never knew when I was going to get my period. It was always a different time. It was a very long cycle length. So it was like 60, 50 days, 45.
Ugh.
Like it was never the same time. So I knew something was always off if it stayed like that for about a year. And then enter seed cycling. That is how I started. I always heard about it because I always read on like Dr. Jolene Brighten's book, but I didn't really start seed cycling until, like everyone, I'm actually one of those people I talk about a lot too. That I'm like, why does everyone start it after they're going through such a hard time? That's when I finally started. I was like, I'm tired of, feeling this way. Like I not done, because I never really was like someone who took a lot of supplements. I was like, I'm done taking like supplement-y pills. Like I don't like what's in them. I don't like fillers. Like my body doesn't recognize them. I want to go back to my roots in like nutrition, dietetics, which
Yes.
again, I just want to start using food as medicine. And that's one of the biggest things I always do about nutrition is you can really be able to support your body through real food. And at the time, I was also coaching clients. And I also had a client who said to me, like, she was tired of taking pills. She was in a really depleted state, and so I was recommending some supplements to her. And this is also the trigger to why
Hmm.
I wanted to create seed cycling for like a mass amount of people, not just for myself and like clients. But she kept saying like I wish there was something that I could just like take as a food that kind of had all these nutrients that did exactly the same thing as a pill, because I'm tired of my pee looks like when I go to the bathroom. That's literally what she said. So she was just tired of just taking like synthetic vitamins and minerals. That's what happens. A lot of them just go also in your pee when you go to the bathroom. So they're not always being absorbed, basically.
Yep.
So that always stuck in my head as well, kind of as I went on my own personal experience. But seed cycling specifically helped me with regulating my cycles. That was really the biggest thing that I had a big change with. Period pain, that definitely helped as well. Period pain took
Mm.
me a little bit longer. It took me about 3 months. That's something else we can even talk into, is that like with seed cycling, it's different for every single person. Like mine, I did it for like breast tenderness, like specifically psychoregulation. But the period pain didn't really start to like completely help me until 3 months in. As everyone's, intensity of period pain is so different. And also everyone's background and their health is so different too, what's going on with them. So seed cycling, again, takes 90 days for an egg to mature. And the 90 days is also how long it can take for hormonal improvements.
Mm.
So that's something I always say. It's food based. So with that, it's gentle, the safer approach. And it's going to probably take a little bit longer than it would if you just took it, like, pills for 2 weeks, like that type of thing, or even just for the first week. So it does take a little bit longer with food based lifestyle approaches. I always tell people just like stay consistent with it. But
Yeah.
my whole journey really came from, again, like kind of coaching clients and like seeing what obstacles they were facing every day. Like I said, my own background, definitely. I always loved nutrition. I used to have an eating disorder when I was in high school. So it's like what got me
Mm.
initially into like the nutrition health space. I wanted to like learn how to eat for my body. And I was always the person who focused so much on like calories and like macros, and
Mm.
realizing that all those low calorie foods and all those like fat free, sugar free foods I was eating was just
Full of shit.
completely yeah, completely disrupting my hormones. I was like, that's probably why I'm in such bad shape. And so when I finally started looking more at like ingredients, it's just such a different experience. Like you're really just prioritizing like more nutrient foods, like less processed. Obviously everything in moderation. Like obviously you shouldn't like cut out every single thing in your life that you really love, but it's just important to make sure that you're, you know, not going for like the diet foods and not solely thinking something is healthy or unhealthy due to the calories and macros. I'm a firm believer on that,
Mm.
approach, and got to prioritize the ingredient list more than that approach. So that's something that's the biggest reason why I kind of went into more studying nutrition. Right now I'm also um, studying at, what's it called? Oh my gosh. Oh, baby nutrition. I completely forgot where I was studying in school, but I'm trying to get my specialization more in fertility. So
Awesome.
yeah, so right now I'm currently doing that too. I'm going to school for that because I love hormone health, and I do have like a certificate in like hormone health as well. But I kind of wanted more of a specialty, fertility, because I think that's
Mm.
important. Like we just already talked about that. It's important regardless if you want kids. So
Well, I know you referred to earlier being
yeah,
misdiagnosed with PCOS.
yeah.
And I know way too many women that are having
Definitely.
that same experience right now of like, oh, I chose to go off birth control to have children. Whereas like to
Yeah.
me, it's exciting to hear the conversation. I want to go off birth control to better heal my body. And then
Yeah.
eventually, if
Yeah.
that is a choice that, I choose to make for myself and my life, then that's an
Yeah.
option.
Exactly.
So it's just so unfortunate when people are like, I'm ready to have a kid, and then it's like, oh, well, your body's not quite ready. But
Yeah.
it could be for so many different reasons, right?
Exactly.
And that could be one of them. So
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful. So thinking about, just in general, how can someone get started with seed cycling? Like if we had to pick, where would you tell us to start? Or how
So
would
I
you tell us
would,
to start?
so again, you technically can seed cycle. Completely just gonna be honest with you. You can definitely seed cycle on your own, and you would just get all the seeds, so the flax, pumpkin, sesame, and sunflower, and you would get them organic and raw. It's really important to also like pre-measure them out, so you have exactly what you need for each phase, and then
Mm,
also freshly grind them. But typically, it's just not something people stay consistent with for more than a month or two, or even three. So I would tell you to just get the kits, and I will also say on top of that that the grinding part, I want to explain that a little bit before people are like, wait, like, why can't I just eat the whole seeds? Why do I have to grind them? Grinding them is really important. So the main reason is because when you see a whole seed, and I can even prove this by if I give you a whole flax seed right now when you go to the bathroom, and I check it when you go to the bathroom, and
it's
I see
gonna
the
come out.
flax still whole, yeah, it's going to come out whole. And so that's basically your body's way of saying, we couldn't process this, digest this, break it down. So all those nutrients inside the shell, yeah, like you didn't get them. What do you think those nutrients inside the shell are doing? They're supporting your hormones. That's where you're getting those benefits.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yes, that's why we're freshly grinding them for you. So when it's ground, you're able to access all those nutrients inside the shell. And so that's like where all the benefits are coming from. So that's the great like ease and convenience part. And all you have to do is add the seeds again on your food. That's literally
Whatever.
the only step, and kind of know where you are in your cycle. But yeah, we have like a subscription based option where it's you get every single month, so every single 4 weeks auto renews. So you just have original. You don't have to get like a subscription either to try it out. We have like a little 15% off discount code too. It's called Manski's 15, and those
Cool.
15% off was like free shipping. But yeah, those are like different options that you can do if you want to start it.
Beautiful. I'll definitely add your website and that discount
Okay.
code in the show notes. I am ready to try this. Like even though
Awesome.
I'm still on birth control, it is time. And I think if I can do whatever I can to prepare my body and
Exactly.
listen to
Yeah.
it. I love your point earlier about just like being intuitive about that stuff, coming from
Yeah.
an athletic background. Like I was an athlete my whole life. And for a while there, I was lifting and tracking my macros like it was my job. And
Yeah.
one, that gets exhausting, but two, as women, like it was for performance, not for taking care of myself. And I very
Yeah.
quickly realized that. And so, when I hear people are like, intuitive eating's crap, or, following a
Yeah.
cycle is crap, I'm like, well, you're crap. I would never say that to someone, but do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
it's
I know
just,
what you're saying.
it's so wild how many different
Yeah,
philosophies are out there. And
I know.
just having the liberty to try those different ones is
Exactly.
really exciting. So
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that.
yeah, cool. I have a few rapid fire questions that I like to
Okay.
ask all my guests as we wrap up the episode.
Okay.
And the first one is, what is your favorite part about the human experience?
I would say to be able to live in alignment with your purpose. I touched a lot about purpose because, again, as a business owner, that's really my huge thing is being able to empower people to really take charge of
Mm,
their health. That's kind of been like a huge purpose of mine, even when I was younger. And so I think as a human, we all have a responsibility, I think, to lean into that and be able to, again, when you're doing that, typically you're making an impact in some way. And so that's my biggest thing is like making an impact in the world by usually living out your purpose. Typically, people's purposes are something that the world needs, and so I think it's important to lean into that.
beautiful. I love it. Why do you think spiritual connection is important?
I think it's important because it's it's the way for you to be able to remember what you're doing is important and to be able to kind of lean into the why of what you're doing. I feel like not every single time, but I feel like when I meditate, usually afterwards, it kind of, when you bring space and be able to
Mm,
just let yourself not think about all the clutter, I feel like you can kind of lean in more into like what's really important, and lean in more into your why, specifically like why you're doing something like this. And I think it just regrounds you into not only what you're trying to do, but also who you're trying to be, and just kind of molding yourself into that person. So I definitely think it's important for that.
yeah, beautiful. Besides all the wealth of knowledge that you share on your socials, which I'll ask you about that in just a moment, but besides what you often share, is there a book or resource that you'd recommend for us to learn more about whatever we talked about today, be it reproductive health, seed cycling, etc.?
So many books out there. Definitely like, in the flow. In the flow is one. Beyond the Pill, Women Code. I'm trying to think of some other ones on top of my head. There's definitely more. Right now I'm drawing a blank, but those are definitely the three that
Yeah.
I definitely really like, and those are the ones that I think are the most important if you want to learn specifically like what we just talked about, like the cycle thinking method. And I love Dr. Jolene Brighten. Like, is this normal? That's another one she wrote. I really like her. I think she's so great to understand. She's a genius, I think, in the hormone health space. So I
Beautiful.
recommend that. If you want anything for free, I always have to say this to people in podcasts, but I also have free like cycle syncing ebook as well. So if you want something for free and you want like free resources like grocery lists in it for every phase and just learn more about your cycle, it's basically why I have it. Is for people who want to seed cycle but kind of want to learn more about the
Mm,
cycle before they do it. Want to learn like how to check ovulation, all those things. It's super interesting. So I recommend just to literally download that. It's for free. We also have like a free tracking e-journal too that you can, it's like 90-day little e-journal. So you just literally do on your phone and like everything is set
cool.
up so you can do it super easy. But it's an easy way to also like understand kind of changes your body is going through if you decide to implement any of these things we talked about, like seed cycling.
Yeah, that's an awesome
Yeah.
resource for folks
Yeah.
who are like, I don't even know where I'm at in my cycle right
Yeah,
now.
exactly. Yeah, and
And
that's super
identifying
normal.
that. Very
Yeah,
cool.
super normal.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing.
Awesome, you're
And
welcome.
last but not least, where can our listeners find all this beautiful info and find your beautiful face online?
So it's Manski's Wellness. So it's MANSKIS_wellness. That's my Instagram handle. I'm also on TikTok, same type of handle, but mostly on Instagram. So
Cool.
that's where you can find me.
Beautiful. Well, Julia, thank you for being on the show today. I am gobsmacked by all the information you gave, and just feeling like personally myself really inspired, and I know our listeners will be really excited to know that it is indeed simpler. The way you broke it down is making this just a little bit easier than I think we've been sold in the past to take care of ourselves. So I just so appreciate you for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. I so appreciate being here as well and being able to share. I think it's so important for women to know. So thank you
Yeah.
again.
Cool. We'll see you next time.
All right. See ya.
All right. Bye.
Bye.